Everybody in, John?
Yeah, so far, yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Compton from the San Juan County Economic Development Council. Thank you for coming today to our listening session. John Gomez from our staff, thank you for setting up that meeting tonight. And I want to introduce our speaker tonight, or our listener tonight, who is State Representative Alex Ramel. We also have his staffer, Amanda Hubick, and we also have Joe Timmons, who is from the governor's office, who's joined us as a guest today just to listen in to everything that's going to be discussed. So without further ado, I'll just tell you quickly a little quick public service announcement. The EDC is an entity that helps businesses in San Juan County. So if your business needs anything, or if you have questions about the economy, you can contact us at any time and we'll get you what you need. So I am going to go ahead and hand it back to John Gomez because you've got a set idea for how you want this to run. So I'll let you drive that. Thank you.
Sure. Just a disclosure, we are recording this for so folks that missed it can watch it later online. We've got some questions that were submitted with the registration, and Amanda's going to walk through those with Representative Ramel, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Please use the chat box if you've got questions you want to put in the queue, and probably towards the end of this, we'll be able to just open it up to everybody since it looks like we'll have a smaller group. So Amanda, the representative, take it over.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and have Rep. Ramel give a quick introduction. We've got some exciting news, new committee assignments were finally announced today. So I'm dancing in my seat about some of that stuff.
Thanks, Amanda. And Joe, I'll let you jump in here in a sec too, and feel free to interject in this conversation. Our hope here is just to give folks a chance to connect, particularly thinking about the impact of sort of the triple whammy that businesses, especially small businesses, have been hit with the pandemic and the restrictions on business and the economic recession. I'm getting a bit of feedback on my line. I don't know if that may be a muting function. Thanks, John. And so I, would very open to just kind of hearing questions, concerns. The state legislature is heading back into session in early January, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about what, to the extent that I can predict the future, what I anticipate will happen there. Also very happy to hear questions. Joe's on the line in part because he may be able to help answer questions about what the current restrictions may mean for particular businesses, business types. And if we don't have those answers on the line tonight, we're all committed to making sure we get those answers back to folks. And I would just say, Victoria, John, really appreciate you taking the time to set this up so that we can hear from folks. I know I do my job better when I'm getting input from folks in the community, and appreciate you all taking the time to help me do a better job. So thanks for setting us up today. And I understand, I think Senator Lovelett may jump in at a later point in the conversation. If she does, we'll certainly catch her up. With that, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Representative Ramel, and I hope everyone can hear me all right. My internet connection is sometimes spotty, and if that's the case, I'll try to move locations. Victoria, it's great to see you again, and thank you for the opportunity to participate. And thank you for the invitation, Representative Ramel and Amanda. Yeah, for those who maybe don't know me, my name is Joe Timmons. I work in the governor's office on our outreach team. I'm our Northwest Washington regional representative. So kind of our boots on the ground for San Juan County, as well as Snohomish, Skagit, Island, and Whatcom counties. I know these are extremely challenging times that we're in, and I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to the experience that folks are going through and to help answer any questions that I can. And as Rep. Ramel said, if we don't know the answer now, I'm happy to follow up at another time. But just thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much, Joe. And Senator Lovelett is on the call today. If you can just go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction, Senator, that'd be great. And then we'll start into questions.
All right. Hey there, Senator Liz Lovelett, representing the 40th District with my seatmate here, Alex Ramel. Just here for about till 5:30, but I do have Jordan Cronin, my staffer, here on as well to take notes if there's anything that we need to follow up with after that. So here to listen, here to help.
All right, thanks so much. So we'll touch on some of the questions that have been submitted when folks registered. And Joe, this very first one might be a little bit aimed more towards you. Someone has asked, what's able to be done to help 501c6s like chambers of commerce and convention and visitor bureaus qualify for PPP loans? PPP, I do believe, is federally managed. So can you give a little bit of guidance as to how that can be administered at the state level?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amanda, and I'll need to circle back with some additional information, frankly. I know that we have the round 3 of the Working Washington grant. I candidly do not know off the top of my head if 501c6 organizations qualify for that. I know some nonprofits are eligible for that, but that is a really important funding opportunity with a quick turnaround at the moment, and I hope everyone is aware and has gotten applications in for funding. And if you haven't already, I would encourage you to do so at your earliest convenience. The deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. for consideration to the Department of Commerce. And the governor announced an additional $50 million for that fund. So now it's $100 million, and it's kind of the remaining CARES Act dollars that we have. But that's a great question. I'll need to circle back on the PPP and 501c6 question, Amanda. But I think it also just kind of highlights this need for additional funding from the federal government as well. I'm hopeful that Congress can act. I know the governor has written letters and has stated in press conferences his hope that Congress can act, because that's really where the grant funding that we as a state have utilized so far has really come from the federal government. So I'm hopeful that a deal can be struck in Congress and that we can get more funding out to folks in this time.
I would just add that the 501c6 conversation came up very early when we started doing 2-corner negotiations about, economic recovery and kind of wool gathering. And so I know that they were trying to figure out a way to incorporate them into the nonprofit umbrella, knowing that they were important economic drivers, but weren't necessarily protected in the same way that other nonprofits were.
Amanda, did we get the contact information for the person who asked that question, so we can make sure to follow up?
I have that.
That's okay. Fantastic. Thanks.
I got that from John. Stephen, did you have a question for us? You can go. Okay. All right. Let's move on to another question. Someone is asking about the data being used to determine where and how COVID-19 is being spread to close down certain low traffic businesses.
So as I understood that question, it was really about sort of the low traffic versus type of business, and sort of how do we draw the distinction between which businesses are covered under given restrictions. And I think, these are really difficult questions, right? And I don't envy the governor having to make those calls. And we're happy to point folks towards the data that's being used here. But it is based on the type of business and the type of industry rather than the traffic of each individual business or community. Of course, in earlier sort of phases, there was some evaluation of county by county, but at this point, the restrictions are based on the type of business rather than the individual traffic. That's a decision that it's not an easy one, but I think it is probably the smartest way to have to draw those lines. And I guess I would just also add, I know that there's a variety of opinions about what the best thing to do in these situations is. My own inbox is full of many people from the San Juan Islands who believe that a low community transmission rate in the San Juan Islands means that we need to restrict who can visit the islands. And so I think there are perspectives sort of on both open up more quickly and stay closed even more severely. And so that's the line that's being walked in these conversations. Joe, I don't know if you want to add anything else from the governor's office or Senator.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to, Representative, and Senator, please feel free to jump in as well. And I know that we've spoken about this before as well. The governor, it absolutely is. It is difficult decisions, and it's difficult. I know the governor doesn't make these decisions lightly around industries. The governor has said all along that he and the state would follow the data and the science around these decision makings. And I say that because, on the one hand, there is the data, and the Department of Health has a deal or a COVID-19 dashboard that may be useful if folks aren't familiar, that kind of shows the epidemiological curves, and it has a statewide outbreak report that's updated weekly. So there's the data piece around, where we think folks are catching COVID-19. And that data is frankly inconclusive. It's, contact tracing is voluntary by nature. We think we have an understanding of where folks are catching the virus, but not everybody is willing to share that information, or not everybody responds to contact tracers. So there is some data out there that does show, for instance, like restaurants are the #1 outbreak location in the data for non-healthcare related settings in the state. But I think for the more recent restrictions, I think really what the governor and the Department of Health really focused on was the science, and just knowing that we are at a time where we are climbing at a near vertical peak of cases, that, the science tells us that folks being indoor with folks from outside your household, not having a mask, and for a lengthy period of time, the more that you do those kind of activities, the higher the risk of the spread of the virus. And so that not all of that is captured in all of the data. As I said, the data is inconclusive in some of that, but we do know that the science, that your risk of COVID-19 goes up if you're in those environments. And so that really is where the governor, I think, really led into his decision-making in this latest round of restrictions. Just because we are in we're going through such a spike that we've never seen before, that really need to kind of lean on the science that we know. And so, but I fully recognize that within that decision-making, that there are unfortunately industries that are hit harder by those decisions than others. It's not fair, it's not equal. And that's in part what the Working Washington grant is hoping to achieve, is going to give priority to those businesses that are primarily impacted, or more heavily impacted, I should say, by the latest round of restrictions. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps answer that. Although I know, it's maybe not the answer that everybody wants to hear.
Thank you very much, Joe. Representative Ramel. We've got another question, and this might be a good time to also open up the floor a little bit, because the question's kind of broad, but it also definitely applies to multiple businesses out in the islands. Someone just very broadly asked, can you tell us more about the help that's coming for self-employed and seasonal workers?
Amanda, can we jump back to that question in a second? I just want to note Senator Lovelett needs to leave in a few, and I think there were some questions about ferry privatization that I'd love to make sure she has a chance to weigh in on while we have her presence.
John, did you want to help with that?
Yeah, it has been discussed up here, that there's this study going on, and just, it'd be good to get a sense of, from, Representative Ramel and Senator Lovelett, just kind of where we are on things with that, and, what people up here can expect, to start hearing in the next couple of months about that process, just to, demystify it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved in almost all the meetings that we've had for the ferry privatization study, and as probably all of you know, was deeply involved in kind of redlining that proviso as it left the legislature, to make sure that we were being very deliberate about what kinds of actions or what kinds of people we wanted to bring in on that feasibility study. So where it is right now is, I will say it came in even better than I had hoped in terms of how much revenue the state loses by axing that run. And then additionally, the revenue to the ferry system is one piece. The net revenue loss to businesses is the second piece. The third piece is it doesn't actually help us reduce staffing levels, which was another consideration. They did, after some very consistent pressure, take out the piece that said what we were talking about was a $240 million boat. And instead, what we're really talking about is a probably $15 million upgrade on a boat we're already going to build in order to have the SOLAS certified boat stay in the fleet. So there was a lot of really positive information that came out of that I think, my hope is with something like this, when you parse around a concept year over year over year and kind of endanger it and force the conversation, but never have any data to substantiate why you would or wouldn't do something, I am hoping that this proviso, like the feasibility study, is going to kind of put it squarely to the transportation leads to say, it doesn't save us any money, guys. In addition to it having very direct localized impacts on our local businesses at a time when we can really scarcely afford to be doing that. Additionally, it does not, there's nothing that says that any of these private people couldn't set up a ferry right now if they just put a pilot on the boat and found a spot to do it. Like, there is nothing preventing them from doing that in the first place. So I don't see any need as a state for us to eliminate what is one of our biggest money-making runs that we have in the system, that we only run during the seasons when it makes money. Additionally, in the meantime, I'm working to formalize the Ferry Legislator Caucus. So with all of the representatives on both sides of the aisle that represent ferry served districts, with myself and hopefully Representative Paul as the incoming chairs of that, to be able to put a little more direct focus on ferry issues and be able to liaison back out both to the Transportation Committee and to our caucuses. So I'm hoping that more formalized structure puts a little more pressure on taking care of our ferry system and really dealing with some of those service issues that we have. So I guess I would say we'll see in terms of what kind of bills, sure, they could totally run another bill that says we're, waiving the pilotage requirement. That then becomes a protracted battle with labor. Don't see that necessarily having a whole lot of, airspace, but as the data came back, it really obviously makes us money.
Yeah, I just really emphasize it costs the state money, it costs the community money, it will cost the passengers money for less service, and it's bad for labor. There's really there's no reason to try and privatize it, and those are my talking points going forward on this, and I think that I'm hopeful that will be persuasive.
Thank you. What do you think, rough timing is on, when this all sort of gets resolved, in legislature?
Oh, when we go back to committee, I mean, they will do like a presentation to the transportation committees so that we can have the opportunity to discuss it. I mean, last year, the pilot waiver came from one of my colleagues in the Senate, and we were able to defeat it in committee before it even got a chance to get exec. And for any of you who are following committee assignments, that landscape didn't get any less bleak for proponents of privatization in our last round of assignments.
Thank you. I think you can probably tell that that ferry is really important to our county. It's like the working people's vacation, our international vacation. So all of us at the EDC, everybody that I know who's a working person is like about the whole thing. So thank you all for your work that you've been doing and all the input that you've given to us as well.
Yeah, and the last little piece on that was we were trying to determine best path forward in terms of incorporating additional references. So whether that made sense to be part of an appendice or whether it be introduced as a minority report. So we have staff working on determining, which has, more weight as it gets reported back out.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And Victoria, thank you for all of the work you've put in on that
Absolutely.
task force. That's
Absolutely.
been really valuable.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, cool. Amanda, I think we could probably open up the floor and just unmute everybody and see what's on people's mind. How's that sound?
Yeah. Have folks unmute themselves as they see fit.
Okay. Cool.
Or is the raise hand function available
Yeah,
on Zoom?
it is. Sometimes even I can't figure out where that thing is, but it bounces around. There's
Host and
on the
co-host.
clapping hand.
Yeah.
But I can
We're
look for
pretty
raised
small
hands.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody can,
What happened? I lost.
There's just a few of you in the room.
Hi, Stephen. You're unmuted. Did you have a question for us?
No, I'm trying to navigate back to being muted. We've got animals and kitchen sounds in the background that I'll.
No worries.
I'm not ready to ask anything yet. Thank you.
Sounds good. You're welcome.
I have a question. You were about to embark on that nice generalized question, and of course I'm eager to hear what you all have to say about that. I really do appreciate, by the way, learning about the ferries. And before we do the questions, I just want to say thank you for doing this, finding a time, and thank goodness I was paying attention to the San Juan news. But especially Representative Ramel, you gave so much of your time to our kids with Salish Sciences last August, and that has turned out to be a very meaningful experience. So I'm looking forward to reporting back that you are doing the good work that you're doing. So I'll just offer that, but please rewind to the prior question if you would. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the question was just getting an update on help for self-employed and seasonal hires.
It's an important question. I may ask Joe to fill in the details here, but I believe so. The challenge here is that the federal government's extended unemployment benefits are slated to expire. I think we all have our fingers crossed that Congress can work out a deal in the next couple of weeks and stop that from happening. That's the best case scenario. But I've heard from the governor that there is a commitment to Plan B on that. And Joe, if you can fill us in on the details of how that's anticipated to work, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Representative. And my apologies, I had to step away. I had a headphone issue. I couldn't hear everyone for a couple minutes there, but that's exactly right. And I'm not an expert on unemployment issues myself, but I do know, my understanding is that there is the pandemic unemployment benefits that Congress passed, which are set to expire, I believe, December 26th. And so if Congress fails to act before that, the governor in his press conference on Monday
did commit to the state stepping in and ensuring that all Washingtonians who are currently receiving unemployment benefits continue to receive those benefits. And so, I know our budget folks have a little bit more details if it comes down to it on how that'll work out, but I hope that provides some sort of peace of mind to folks who are maybe watching anxiously at Washington, D.C. And, again, hopefully they can act and hopefully it doesn't come to the state stepping in there. And one thing I do want to mention, though, too, is that, as part of the legislative process, the governor proposes a budget to the legislature, and that's expected to come out next week. And as part of that, I believe we will have some sort of pandemic response or recovery effort as part of that as well. So back to the question of the 501c6, that's one of the things I'll check in with our budget team if we can expect something around that or a flag for them. But there should be some additional economic relief that the governor proposes, and then of course goes to the legislature to work its way through the legislative process. But more information on that next week. But yes, long story short, I'm kind of sidestepping the unemployment benefit question. But yeah, my understanding is that those the pandemic relief for kind of the self-employed or independent contractors really is set to expire December 26th unless Congress acts. And if Congress fails to act, then the state will step in and ensure that those folks continue to receive benefits.
Thanks, Joe. I guess there is a tangentially related issue that with some business owners on the phone, I want to make sure and mention as well. When we bring up the unemployment insurance, there's sort of the one side for folks who are receiving those benefits and need them. I think that's critically important. There's a second piece, which is looming for business owners who have to pay unemployment insurance. And the experience rating for a business owner who had employees who were rightfully so asked to stay home and were unemployed and were collecting those benefits, those business owners are looking at a formula that says that experience rating has to go up, which could mean a many-fold increase in their unemployment insurance premiums beginning next year. That is nobody's intent. And it is, the formula was not designed for this situation. And I feel confident that the folks, at least in the Democratic caucus on the House side, are working towards the technical fix that will address that problem to make sure that folks are not going to face that unintended consequence. It is not as easy as just we make a change because unemployment insurance interrelates with state law with federal law. And so we have to sort of work with our federal partners to make those changes. But I feel confident in telling you all that we're committed to making those changes so that that unintended spike in unemployment insurance rates does not happen for companies.
And I'm sorry, I do have to leave now, but like I said, Jordan's on here and of course with Amanda and Alex. So if there's anything that you need specifically to follow up with my office, and of course, moving forward, anything that comes up, we're here. And while we can't solve all the problems all the time, we will do our best to make sure that, you get the support that you need. So thank you as always for being willing to share your stories and let us know what work we need to do to be meaningfully helpful.
Thank you so much for coming tonight, Senator.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
And if I may too, just to kind of piggyback off Representative Ramel's comment there, I appreciate that about the rates that employers pay to kind of refill the bucket, so to speak. It's something that our office is working on as well. My understanding is that the governor will put forward a governor request legislation to help alleviate some of these burdens that are placed on employers, not because they're letting employees go because they had a bad business plan, frankly, but just because of this unfortunate pandemic that affects everybody. So it's definitely something I'm glad to hear that the House caucus is interested in working on that. I know our office is too. And so I am optimistic that something can get done this legislative session on that.
Thank you, Joe. And I see we have a guest who's turned on his camera. Paul, happy to have you join us. Love to have you unmute yourself and speak with us. We're here to listen.
Excellent. Thank you, John and Victoria, for putting this together. And I promised Victoria I would remain civil. So I will, I'll do my best, but I'm going to describe the way I feel physically right now. Is my chest is tight and I feel pounding going from my temples to the back. Okay, and I've been like that since the November 14th declaration that small businesses seemingly targeted with no data support have been closed. I scroll through the attendees and I see many who are still getting a paycheck and have since March. I haven't taken any money from my company that I've owned for 13 years, survived the recession, the Great Recession. And you know, we're on the border, we're on the brink. I'm down $200,000 in gross revenue. I'm 60,000 plus in debt because while the governor protected homeowners, he didn't protect businesses. And with all due respect, I'd say representatives is kind of a misnomer at this point in time, because we're one of 3 states in the country that has not convened some sort of session to have actual representation. So from our perspective as small business owners, at least mine and many that I know, we're under one-man rule, which just seems just philosophically, morally, and ethically wrong. You're ripping our lives apart. So Mr. Timmons, I'm talking to you. You're ripping our lives apart. And if you could tell us why, I mean, just the why, not speculations, not what ifs. The word could is a great media word right now. What could happen? If I cross the street, I could get hit by a car. If we open a gym, someone could get COVID. And yet the data that our trade association, the Washington Fitness Alliance, has put forward completely dismisses that. There are really no recorded issues around gyms. Yet I'm watching a football game and you can get 2 Whoppers for $5 now. And yet obesity, of which plagues 40% of our country, type 2 diabetes, alcoholism, these problems that are deferred through health and fitness are allowed to continue. And I'm completely against the individual's choice to do that. But something's really wrong. And I think the big question that no one will answer is with all this data that we have that health clubs and fitness industry are not a major source of spread, why would I close my business, in effect ruin my life, because one man says so? And he says so, he proudly states data, science, and experts for Washingtonians. That's like his motto. And yet the data is there now after 9 months and he ignores it. I mean, that's the impression. Maybe he looks at it, maybe he's got a different set of data. I really don't know. But I'm telling you that, you know, the 100 million, I saw it on Facebook. They were, you know, apply for this. Paul, have you applied for this? And it's like, yeah, I applied last time. I got 3,200. My rent is $16,329 a month. My electric bill is $5,500 a month. So with this current one, I'm sure if you do the math with 16,000 applications in and some 34,000 in process, it's not going to be a lot. Don't get me wrong. We appreciate anything, but it's put out there to the general public goes, oh yeah, you know, Governor Inslee's putting in the work and he's got 100 million to bail out small business. And it's feeding on ignorance. So there's my input. I don't expect answers right now, other than the one question that Alex, you've heard me, you've written, and I appreciate your responses, by the way. But I just want to know why. Thank you. Was that good, Victoria?
Paul, I appreciate you raising the question. I appreciate the communication. We've been back and forth a couple of times, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad we're staying in dialogue. I will say, if we have been in session, I would vote to back what the governor's done. That has been my position.
Why? Why?
And it's because we're saving lives, and I'm confident of that. And I think we can look at other places in the country where there are fewer restrictions, and we're seeing spikes that are leading to people dying. And I'm
Not from fitness.
but, I mean, we can go back and forth on that too.
Well, okay, then will you just please provide me a report, written data, something that tells me that people are going to gym to stay healthy and then dying of COVID? Because that's what's missing. I mean, I'll calm down I'm the first one to say, if we had major outbreaks that, yeah, the data's there, health clubs are it, I'd be falling in line because I don't want to hurt anyone either. I mean, the main objective of my business is to help people, not to hurt them. So give me a why and I'll shut up. But until then, I don't know what to do. I've told you, I'm at the edge. I'm at the brink. So if you tell me why, I'll love it. But otherwise, it's just.
The data that we have on community transmission is not fine-grained enough to tell us whether those transmissions are happening at fitness clubs. That is as I understand it, is sort of the underlying argument that you're making. There is data about the amount of congregation that's happening in fitness clubs, and everything that we know about how the disease spreads when people are in the same place, breathing heavily for a long period of time, close to each other, especially when it's people outside your household. Those are all of the risk factors. And I absolutely hear you that's the impacts on your business. I understand, and it is heartbreaking, and you're not alone.
Right, but
that's the difficulty.
Okay, not to shoot myself in the foot, but why are pools open?
I guess I didn't know that pools are open.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that if indoor pools are. I'm not aware of that as well.
They are.
They are, okay. I'm not. I wasn't aware of that. Paul, I just want to say I appreciate your input. I appreciate your comments. These are extremely frustrating and challenging times, and I appreciate your willingness to discuss and be civil. And I just want you to know I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, it is extremely challenging. And I know, I think part of the difficulty in our messaging, and I can understand how folks feel this way. If you do, you're definitely not alone, that certain industries are maybe being punished. And that is not in the governor's decision making here. And you can believe me in that or not. And you, of course, have a right to do that. But it's really not about trying to punish folks who are being bad actors. It's really about trying to limit the risk of spread of this disease. And you know, when the governor put the most recent restrictions in place, you know, he did so on a Sunday, and he was scheduled to do so that Monday. But frankly, heard from Department of Health officials that each hour is going to save lives here, and that's what we're hearing from the Department of Health. That's what we're hearing from our hospital experts who are facing capacities. But you're absolutely right. It's not fair that certain industries and certain businesses are impacted in a more difficult way than others. You know, I mean, I look at an industry, for instance, like residential plumbing, right? Like they're doing very well during this because people are staying home. It's not fair. It's absolutely not fair. But it really, the governor doesn't make those decisions lightly, and doesn't do so in a way that is attempting to be vindictive or punishable towards certain industries. It's really a matter of trying to limit the number of folks who are indoors unmasked, doing activities, including heavy breathing or other things that we know increase the risk of the spread of the virus. And And my hope is that we can get through this. My hope is that we have a holiday season where everybody separates. We don't see cases go up, and we can get back to your business being open and every other business being open, because that's what we want. You know, the quicker we get through this thing, the more certainty we have. I'm hopeful that we can do that. And I appreciate you bringing up the $100 million. You're completely right on that. You know, it's that is the remaining federal dollars that we have to use for this cause, but it's by far doesn't meet the need that's out there, without a doubt. And I am hopeful that Congress can act to give us more funding to distribute. You know, the governor previously, you know, the funding that went down to counties and cities was also federal dollars. You know, we don't have as a state those kind of dollars at our disposal the way the federal government does. And so I know $100 million sounds like a lot, but frankly, when you spread that butter across the peanut butter across the state, it really doesn't meet the need that's out there. So I really sympathize with that. And you're completely right. I think we need exercise now more than ever. This is a stressful, difficult time. Exercise helps with people's mental health, behavioral health, physical health, all the above. And I am really hopeful that we can get to a spot where you and your counterparts are open across the state as quickly as we can. And I frankly, I appreciate your input. It's why I wanted to be on this call, is to hear from you and others who are experiencing this. And, you know, again, as to the why, and it might not serve what you're hoping to hear, but it really is just from what we know about this virus, is that unmasked activity, including heavy breathing indoors with folks outside your household, just increases the risk of spreading this virus.
I appreciate it. It's yeah, you're right. And it's not really, I'm okay with hearing things I don't want to hear. I just want to hear why. And I'm still going to go back to, now we're 9 months into, we have data, we know where it's spread, you know, and households are pretty much number one. We're way down, if even mentioned at all, and yet we're closed. But I can go across the street to our hardware store and walk through aisles crowded with people, and they're from different households. And not that I think they should be closed, but it's just something's real wrong, societally wrong, that we're in this dilemma in the first place, because people make poor life decisions. They don't keep their bodies in shape, and you end up with the comorbidities that are creating the hospitalizations that are leading to shutdowns. And it's so the pathway to success over this, you know, right now it's a vaccine, but long term it's get a healthier country, and we're shutting that part down, and it doesn't make sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Can I ask a quick question about that sort of thing? What I see a lot is, you know, like in theater companies or other things where people are in proximity, they've gotten grants to put the plexiglass between them. It seems to me that a business like Paul's would be just fine if he had a grant that it's, first of all, it's a very small business. I know you said that you can't really do things by size, but, which I think is a shame, because, you know, island life isn't exactly the middle of Seattle. But, you know, I was just thinking about outside the box. How come you guys haven't come up with something like, here's a grant for you to put the plexiglass around the machines, and then that helps all the spraying of the air, because it's always about, you know, how much juice is coming out. And then Paul can thrive and be the one of the shinier spots on the island, and keep our folks healthy, because it is a real loss. Anyway, just asking, actually, I just thought that's another question that if I were Paul, I would be asking, since I'm dying to know, threw it out there. Sorry for not minding my own business, but I'd love to hear what.
Sure. So those sort of social distancing and barrier requirements for those businesses and others were in place when we were in phase 2, phase 3 for the different business types. the current restrictions, because of the astronomical increase in rates of COVID spread over the last 5 or 6 weeks, have taken us back several steps from that. So you're exactly right that when we get back to a point where we can have the disease under control and have more limited community spread, then on a community by community basis, we'll be able to say the rates are low enough here, and then it's safe to open under those kinds of circumstances that you described.
And if I may, Representative, to add to that too, I think that's well said. And my understanding is that our office is, I should say too, just as a little bit of background, our office, and this is why I really appreciate these kind of opportunities to hear directly from business owners, because, our office and the governor can't meet with every single business across the state in these decisions. And so what we have done is met with statewide associations to gather input, a hospitality association, other folks, to try to, before we roll out guidance, to say, hey, would this work with your industry, for instance? The last thing we want to do is put something out there that creates an undue burden or can't be followed or all that kind of stuff. And so my understanding is that once we do get over this spike, and we will get over this spike as a state, we will go back to a more of a county by county model. And I don't think it will be the exact same of what the previous Safe Start plan was. I think we're looking at kind of a Safe Start revamp, if you will. As we continue to go through this pandemic, as we've gone through this pandemic, it's kind of tried to, stop using, an axe and using more of a scalpel of ways that we learn more about this science and this data, right? And trying to find ways to help industries and businesses work within these different ways. And that's what's so challenging to me about this most recent spike, is that we've kind of gone back to that, for lack of a better metaphor, kind of that axe approach, which is statewide, regardless of case numbers, here's what we're doing. And I totally get some frustration for an area like Island County or San Juan County, where numbers aren't the same as King County or Yakima County, or Spokane County, but we're just at a spot as a state right now where the Department of Health and the governor thought it was necessary to do this statewide, just in order to drive this spike down, to save lives and to keep our hospital capacity open. So that's a great point about those kind of industry by industry sort of, things you can do on a very micro level to help prevent the spread of the virus. And I do expect that once we get over this spike, we will kind of return to something that's more of a model like that.
And I guess I'd just add sort of one more sort of big picture piece here, because I really do want to sort of let folks know this is heartbreaking. We saw in the Seattle Times, I don't think we had San Juan County specific data, but in the Seattle Times, it was 50 some restaurants in Bellingham, where I live, have closed since the start of the pandemic. That's the statistic that's out this morning. I worked for a number of years at a small business association focused on local independent businesses here in Bellingham. Those numbers are absolutely heartbreaking. And it is only up against, numbers of people getting seriously ill and dying that we can even sort of look at this and say, yes, that is heartbreaking and feels like the right decision. As Joe pointed out, the governor's being guided in this by health department officials. And we get periodic briefings as legislators on that information as well. And I would just say, again, if the choice gets handed over to the legislature when we begin meeting again, I don't anticipate making dramatically different decisions. I think we have to continue to be guided by those public health experts, as hard as some of this has been.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Joe. Veronica, we saw you on screen for a little while. Thank you for being patient. If you wanted to share something with the group, we'd love to hear from you at this point. Okay.
I think she just went away.
Okay. Well, we did get one more question through the chat, and it might be the last one for the night. There is a group in the San Juans, the San Juan Makers Guild, and they are researching federal funding for rural business incubators and are wondering what the state resources around this should they focus on or be familiar with.
I might turn a question like that over to John or Victoria for those local business resources. The one thing I'd say about anticipated or pending legislation, Sharon Shoemake up here in Bellingham, who represents the 42nd district, is working on legislation focused at making it so that food related sort of what's cottage food industries would be easier. It would make essentially to make it easier to sell those products, especially by mail, which I guess there's some red tape in the way of right now that she's working to eliminate. But I don't know if sort of startup and incubator resources, that might be an Economic Development Council question.
I know we have conversations with Washington Micro Enterprise Association from time to time. Lisa Smith over there, you know, they work with startups, you know, five employees and under kind of thing, and you know, try to help them get business loans and stuff like that. But I'm not sure if this is what Stephen's going for. Stephen, you want to unmute yourself and jump in and save me here?
I'd like to expand that on that a little bit because I heard part of it, but I got a chat message in the box, so I got derailed at the beginning. Stephen, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Could you repeat the first part of your question or just do the whole thing again so they can make sure that I caught everything?
We've been researching federal funding for rural business incubators, and we've had some encouraging conversations, and we've had some encouraging past experience.
Fantastic.
So because we've only been back 2.5 years, we're, you know, kind of learning by asking for help in terms of being pointed toward resources that you can just assume, even though we can tell a good story and sometimes get the money, just assume we don't know. You know, pretend we probably don't, and so if you can point us in any directions over time, we'd be grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. So off the top of my head, if for business incubator programs, the EDC does a launch program. We haven't done it for a couple of years, but we're going to be rolling it out this spring. So that's one component that we do. We also do entrepreneurship, you know, startup support all the time. So that's something that happens just as a matter of course. In terms of a physical incubator spot, the closest one that we have is in Bellingham. And that is I cannot remember the name of it, but I'll get that to you. There's one particular, Joe. Yeah.
Is it the Northwest Innovation Resource
Yes,
Center?
thank you.
Right. And,
yes.
And we're actually, they've been helping us with thinking this through. We are talking about at least the funding we've been researching would provide physical space. It would be a place, and it would provide the cross section of resources and support that you might imagine that a makerspace includes, which is
Yes.
workshops and
Absolutely.
instruction and retail. And so, but I guess just for Alex and Amanda and hi, Christine, glad to see you here again. We do have a little funding from the Rural Business Development Division of the USDA that's allowing us to do research to lay the foundation for a maker's industry to take us a greater chunk of the local economy, contribute a greater chunk to the local economy and support the kind of tourism that we'd prefer to see here in the weaving educational opportunities into the process. So I'll shut up now. I've said enough.
No, it's great. I love to hear this. And it's great that you're already talking to the NWIRC, because that's really, they are the incubator kings and queens. They'd be really helpful if you're thinking of a physical space. And I'll reach out to you later to talk about our business innovation planning program that we do. That we're
Well,
really,
and I'm intrigued with the marine space that's
Absolutely.
happening on San
Well, and
Juan.
have you talked to Todd Nicholson over at the port?
He was on
a call that we were on where they presented.
Yes, exactly. So he'd be a good person to reach out to as well, because he's looking forward to putting a makerspace into that.
Yes, yeah, and we've already talked to him about possibly doing a kelp nursery to support the potential kelp farming that we foresee could re-inhabit our region and help clean up the mess that we made. Absolutely. And provide food and medicinal products. And so anyway.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of remediation that needs to happen on that property. So that would be great if that was a component of it. Cool. Well,
can I pipe in? How exciting this is for me to be at this meeting. And Mr. Shrader, we've never met, but this is kind of a moment here. So we're Sailor Sea Sciences, and I've been working with Todd the last 2 years about that space, and most recently have been unofficially allied with folks with the Friday Harbor school system, talking about a county-wide effort so that some portion of that makerspace is devoted to the kind of instruments and programming that is good for marine and maritime development, of which we would then be also partnered. So we should talk, because we're also talking about aquaculture and restoration, and I work a lot with the folks with marine conservation and stuff about eelgrass restoration. Great. And kelp is also, Becca Gunther, Dr. Gunther at the labs, she's a big participant with us, as well as other folks from the Harvell lab. So we should talk because, in fact, the reason I asked the unemployment-based question about seasonal and self-employed is we've been forced into that position because of COVID. We lost nearly $200,000 of expected revenue this year, and we're trying to build a semester school, so like a full year operation. It's hard to build it when all the programs are for, rightly so, of course, trying to keep other businesses that are pre-existing open, but there's no room for businesses that are trying to actually become much bigger and employ many more people and change the, like you said, change the nature of the kind of tourists that we attract and how we can kind of build the reputation for the islands as an educational destination and a maritime and a marine science destination and all those good things, and that we take care of what we love, as friends like to talk about it. So anyway, I just want to get that out there, that that's a little bit why I'm at this meeting. And so coming to the conclusion of it and hearing that you guys are talking about the incubator and innovation and not just about making up for shortfalls of the pandemic is very, very exciting to me. So Thank you, everybody. I just had to, I'm very excited. I had to share some enthusiasm and not just feeling bad about how crappy everything is.
Thanks, Carolyn.
You know, one of my teachers coined a term called active hope. And so for me, I can quickly get swallowed by the elements of the stress of the emotional field we live in today together. And, you know, looking for what's in front of me and just seeing if there's something I can do now is the only way out. I know that, and animals, but that's another.
I want to just pipe up and say the only saving grace of horrible situations like this is that it opens up all kinds of opportunities that we've sort of noodled on over the last few decades, actually. And it's like ripping off a Band-Aid, or, well, no, not like ripping off a Band-Aid, but it's like leveling something. Like the only thing that we can do is build back up at this point. And there's a lot of opportunities, and it's incredibly hard, but it's also a time of opportunity. And I think, Stephen, you're right. It's just a time where we have to maybe manufacture hope, but it is a hopeful time if we really think about it. Right now, it's really, really dark, though, so it's hard to think about that part of it.
Yes, yes, it is that as well. And I guess we get to practice being in both places at once.
Yes, yes, exactly. And realizing that everybody that we're running into now is experiencing the same thing. It's hard to think beyond our own things and hardships and problems, but realize that everybody's got this unbelievable weight on their shoulders that is pushing us down at the same time. That, you know, we have these opportunities, but it's hard to move forward past the pain of this time. So what I really love about situations like this, so thank you, Representative Ramel and Joe and everybody else who was here, Amanda and John, for putting this together, because this is a group of people. And that's, I think, the thing that's going to get us through this is just continuing to talk to each other and continuing to kind of virtually hold hands through this, because it's so painful and so hard, but only doable with each other, really.
Hey, Victoria, it's Deborah at the Visitors Bureau.
How are you?
Hello. Good. I've been listening in, of course, and I just want to say to Stephen and Carolyn that we are always trying to promote the wonderful natural things going on here regarding tourism. So I'd love to talk with you two also. You know, we've really been shifting what we promote to voluntourism, agritourism, heritage tourism. So since 2003 when we started. So I'd love to connect with you guys too.
That's great. You guys need to talk.
Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate your invitation.
Yes,
Me too.
I'll find you.
Well,
Hi, can I just take a second?
oh, please
This
do.
is Christine Minnie. Sorry, I just want to acknowledge that I'm here. I came in late. And to say thank you, both John, Victoria, and everybody else involved in presenting tonight. I'm staying on video because I've done 3 days of training on Zoom and I'm a mess in my recliner, and it is what it is, but I can see all of you and that matters the most. I don't have any questions, of course, but I was just here mostly to hear from my fellow community members and their concerns, and to see all of you. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really appreciate everybody for coming and sharing what you've had to share. And I Stephen, Caroline, Deborah, really appreciate being able to sort of end on making a connection there. I think that really speaks to a big piece of the value of the EDC, right? Is sort of bringing people together so that ideas can germinate. And it's it is a pleasure to be able to sort of witness that happening in real time. So I think we're about at time here tonight, and I just want to reiterate again that we're always ready to hear more from folks who have issues, especially if you have ideas that we can use to help improve the situation. Senator Lovelett was on earlier. Our other seatmate, Deborah Lakanoff, is in close coordination with us. We connect with Joe, the four of us, and a few other reps from the area once a week. So we've got a direct line with the governor's office and with each other. Our assistants, Amanda and Jordan and Kaylee, are talking to each other, 5-10 times a day to make sure things are coordinated. So we're trying to make sure that there's no wrong door. When you reach out to one of us, you're able to sort of hear, you're able to get whichever one of us knows the answer. And so that's kind of how we are trying to make a commitment to the community for those kinds of constituent services. So please do reach out anytime. And the other thing I've been emphasizing, and I'll emphasize it especially for folks on the islands, is that in this coming legislative session, everything we do is going to be online. And that's going to make some things a lot more difficult, but it is going to make our constituents' ability to connect with us when we're quote unquote in Olympia a lot easier. It means, you don't have to get on a boat and drive for 3 hours to get a 15-minute meeting. We can just schedule a 15-minute meeting this way. And it means you don't need to be, to take an entire day off work to come testify in front of committee on an issue that is going to impact your community or your business. You can just sign up online to testify at committee and get on another virtual Zoom call. And I hope folks will take full advantage of that in the coming legislative session. And I'd just say again, thanks, Victoria. Thanks, John, for setting this up. Joe, really appreciate your ability to be here with us. And Amanda, thanks as always for managing and facilitating.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everybody.
And thanks,
great to-
Georgia, for staying. And well, this will, like I said, this has been recorded for posterity. So we'll be online tomorrow if you guys want to catch up and see if you joined late and missed anything. Be at the same link where you probably found this invite. So thank you very much from the EDC. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
And John, if I may say, but just real quick, I put my contact information in the chat as well.
Yes,
so if anybody, my door is always open, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And Representative Ramel, thank you for the invitation, and everyone, thanks for your time. So have a good
And if anybody missed all that in the chat before we go, hit us up on email tomorrow at info@sanjuans.org, and we'll zip it right out to you. Okay.
Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.